Question challenge.
Thank you, Sir David, and it's a real pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning in what is a very calm and sensible week in Parliament. And I'm sure all eyes will be focused on this very important debate. And I would like to thank my honourable friend for St Austell and Newquay for securing this debate. I know he has an exceptional track record of working in this very, very important area, and it's a real credit to the work that he's done that he has so much support from colleagues who've attended this debate today. And I'd also like to pay tribute to his work alongside the noble lady Baroness Eaton with the Centre for Social Justice, which culminated in their recent report on the family test. It was a really excellent piece of work. It was a really good way to focus not just my department's minds but across government, and I will go into more detail further on. And I would like to thank all of the members who contributed today, in particular my honourable friend for St Ives and my honourable friend for Congleton. Many of the questions that have been raised I will cover in the speech, but two quick things before I forget. I would be delighted, diary permitting, parliamentary duties permitting, to attend the Family Hub event, so please do, if my honourable friend for Congleton can make sure I have all those details. And for the honourable member for St Ives, who has been absolutely fantastic in his work as an MP, supporting those with special education needs, using the wealth of experience from his former work prior to arriving in the House. And I recognise the points he made about supporting families with special education needs children. I want to actually pay tribute to one of my local special education needs schools, the Uplands School, because a very small change that could be easily adopted by all schools, and it's making a huge difference. Like all schools, they have parental supported classes where it's sort of peer-to-peer support. They get round over cups of tea, talk about their own challenges that they're facing and how they can support each other. And the small change that the head teacher, Jackie Smith, has made is to make sure that once parents know their children will ultimately end up at that school, they get the invite to those support classes, not waiting till the first day that they come. And actually, they're therefore providing that peer support from early day, and it's making a huge difference. Now, we also had contributions from the honourable member for Glasgow Central, who I think perhaps stretched the intention of this debate, and was perhaps most of her comments were probably better aimed at a Home Office debate, and I'm sure there will be opportunities for Home Office ministers to respond in the future. And the honourable member for Wirral West, I do thank her for welcoming the principle of the family test, and that I do appreciate that, and then sort of applied a series of political statements loosely to the principles of the family test. And it would be amiss, Sir David, if I didn't correct some of the points made. For example, under this government there are now 500,000 fewer families on the housing waiting list. Food affordability, the measure as to whether families can afford the basics in terms of food, has almost halved in just under 5 years and is at 2.5% lower than the EU average. Material deprivation has never been lower. Income inequality, I will come in a second, income inequality has fallen under this government, having risen under the last Labour government. There are now 300,000 fewer children in absolute poverty. Welfare spending under the last Labour government, the honourable member wasn't willing to take interventions from colleagues who are actually sticking to the principles of the family test debate. Under the last Labour government, welfare spending went up on average £3,000 per house. Imagine the impact on hard-working families. I will shortly. The Labour opposition have voted against the income tax threshold changes, which have given families an additional £1,200 a year. The amount of money we're spending on childcare will have risen from £4 billion in 2010 to £6 billion by 2020, a 50% increase, and we are delivering record employment in all regions of the UK, supporting families yet again. Yes.
The Minister actually has made my point for me. The opposition speech has highlighted the fundamental difference in the way that we are approaching this issue. The opposition's solution to so many of these social problems is throw more money at it. There was no money left when they finished in government. Yeah. What we are saying is, if you will strengthen family lives, just like the teacher you've spoken of, you will actually prevent the problems happening in the first place, like the mental health problems in school, like addiction, like the problem going to GP surgeries with depression and losing work days. This is the fundamental difference. This is the reason why we are pressing for the government to strengthen family life, because we believe that prevention is far better and cheaper than an attempted cure.
Thank you. And my honourable friend is absolutely spot on. And it was clear in the speeches from my colleagues of the constructive, proactive, real focus on the absolute principles of the family test. And so, David, I shall now turn to that. Many honourable members have underlined the importance of the family test today, and I'm pleased to see sustained interest in the family test amongst colleagues. I wish to restate the government's commitment to the family test, which was introduced in 2014, to help put families at the heart of policy making. And in designing the test alongside the Relationships Alliance, we wanted to help policymakers to understand how policies might positively or negatively affect families. And we want family impacts considered early on, so that they can shape proposals rather than at the end when we are preparing to announce and implement any changes. Now, that's absolutely key, because the test is helping to ensure that this is properly represented in advice members receive. And my honourable friend for St Austell and Newquay was absolutely spot on when he rightly said it just had to be embedded into that early thinking. We wanted the test to be, I'm going to respond to actually what is the thrust of this debate. We wanted the test to be broad and flexible, reflecting the nature of 21st century families. The test already encourages policymakers to consider a wide range of impacts, including family formation, families going through key transitions, the ability of all family members, dads, mums and the extended family to play a full role in family life, and families who have separated or are undergoing separation, and those families most at risk of deterioration of relationship quality and breakdown. And I acknowledge that some would like the family test to be statutory obligation, but feedback from policymakers, and as highlighted in speeches today, tells that a statutory test risks becoming a box-ticking exercise at the end of the policy process with pass or fail incomes, when, as we have already said, the key is embedding that at the very beginning of the process. And a legislative test also risks losing the flexibility to adapt and change. Sir David, I welcome the Centre of Social Justice review of the family test, and I thank them for highlighting these important issues, many of which my officials have been working with departments to address. There is a strong alignment between the report's recommendations and our approach to strengthening practice in use of the test. And I absolutely agree that individual departments should take responsibility and ownership for the application of the family test. And it's interesting that my honourable friend's report will have highlighted good and bad practice. There they are, it's on record, and they will no doubt be held to account, though the Attorney-General's response probably is the shortest response I've heard from any department. And I know my honourable friend for Congleton will be scrutinising that very carefully. And we are working with a network of representatives from all domestic policy departments to develop tailored resources to help their officials apply the test in their unique policy context and ensure advice to their ministers reflects the impact on families. And this will be underpinned by our refresh of the central guidance for officials, which we expect to publish this summer. And this is an important area of work, and I will come back to that at the end with a request of those members who've demonstrated passion to make sure we get this right. And I can also confirm that my department will give active consideration into including the family test in the DWP business plan. Now, Sir David, I'm pleased to be part of the interministerial group which is focusing on how to improve support for families in the first 1,001 days. Another of the report's recommendations is for the ministers to take a more active role in ensuring that the family test is applied in their departments. And I can confirm that I have raised the family test with this group of ministers, and I will ask them to actively look for where the test has been considered in all of the advice they receive on any topics in their departments. And the Centre for Social Justice's excellent report builds on the important issues raised by the colleagues who published the manifesto to strengthen families. It also highlights some examples of where departments are using the test and where it has consequently made a real difference to the policy-making process. But we do recognise that there is more progress to be made ensuring that the family test is robustly applied to all domestic policy. This is why my department, which has the cross-government lead on the test, has been taking action to strengthen implementation across the government. Now, each department does have a nominated representative, something I know that my honourable friend for St Austell and Newquay has highlighted the importance of, on how our new family test network. This network is identifying, developing and sharing best practice on applying the family test. And it is helping us to deepen our understanding of how the test is being applied across government and what further support officials need to fully embed this as part of the range of considerations made when formulating policy. Now, the network is giving particular attention to the need highlighted by the report to build evidence, and we are currently exploring ways to support departments to address this. And we will continue to encourage and support departments to apply the family test and make their own judgments on whether and when publishing assessments is appropriate. We will consider whether there is more that can be done to improve transparency, including reflecting on the recommendations from the report. Although it's unclear whether knowing how many family tests a certain department has applied will bring much greater or more meaningful transparency, and I'm keen to avoid introducing layers of unnecessary bureaucracy to the policy-making process, but I do understand the thrust of the point that has been made. And insights from the network are driving our review of the family test guidance, which is published on gov.uk and helps officials to understand why, when and how they should apply the family test. The revised guidance planned for summer 2019 will better reflect the needs of the users. And alongside this, we are also helping departments develop a toolkit of resources for officials to improve the consistent and meaningful family test application across government. As effective implementation of the test is fundamentally an issue around capability, we are also working with the Civil Service Learning and Policy Profession Unit to consider how best to support policymakers to apply the family test effectively. Now, Sir David, I also want to share some examples of how this government is actively working to make lives better for families, and our policies are responding to the key questions and evidence the family test sets out. My department is currently implementing the Reducing Parental Conflict programme backed by £39 million. This programme is helping councils across England to recognise the evidence on the damage parental conflict can do to children's long-term outcomes. It will soon be providing evidence-based, face-to-face support for parents in 31 local English authorities. And having sat at a really important round table with those local authorities that are engaging, there is a real enthusiasm to deliver this programme and to build that tangible, constructive evidence.
Thank you. And I welcome
Fiona Bruce.
Could I ask that there needs to be, as an integral part of it, strengthening the couple relationships themselves, not just the parent-child relationships. And that's something I'd be grateful if the Minister would look into.
And I thank my honourable member, and we're just digesting all of the successful bidders for the various strands of that programme, and I'm sure there'll be many organisations with a proven track record in that area of work, and I'm very happy to go into greater detail in a meeting on this specific programme. We want the face-to-face support to be available to the families who need it most. This is why we will be prioritising help for workless and disadvantaged families, and why we are currently exploring how we can ensure the eligible parents we are already working through the Job Centre Plus and the Child Maintenance Service are able to access this support as early as possible. All local authorities can access funding to increase their strategic capability around addressing parental conflict, as well as training for frontline staff. And we're funding even more through innovation, both through our joint work with DHSC to support children of alcohol-dependent parents and our new £2.7 million Reducing Parental Conflict Challenge Fund. And I know a number of cross-departments have helped highlight that to their stakeholders to make sure we get really good engagement. And the principles of the family test are visible across government. The Department for Education has recently announced that all children and young people will soon be taught about the importance of healthy relationships, including marriage and family relationships. And I welcome the positive comments from my honourable friend for St Austell and Newquay about the Ministry of Defence and the Department for Health and Social Security. But the Ministry of Justice are also considering how we can reduce conflict in families who are undergoing divorce, and the Troubled Families Programme is delivering better ways of working around complex families, improving outcomes for individuals in those families, reducing their dependency on services and delivering better value for taxpayers. That programme aims to achieve significant and sustained improvement of up to 400,000 families with multiple high-cost problems by 2020. It's something I passionately support. Sir David, in conclusion, I wish to thank all of those members who contributed to the thrust of this debate, and in particular my honourable member for St Austell and Newquay, who has been a real champion in this area. We welcome the Centre for Social Justice continued constructive work and their review into the family test, and we are actively considering those recommendations. The importance to our society of strong families can't be understated, and we look forward to continuing to work with all honourable members as we continue to work to strengthen the use of the family test and make a difference to families. And finally, I would very much welcome an opportunity to meet with my three honourable friends and the Centre for Social Justice to have a real deep dive look at the recommendations, both in their respective speeches and in the recent report. Thank you, Sir David.